All right, welcome to the deep dive, everybody. When we were prepping for this one, I came across something kind of wild.
Oh,
Yeah, so apparently there are, get this, over 100 different definitions of creativity.
really?
Yeah, over 100.
Huh.
At least according to this research paper from way back in 2000 by Aleinikoff and his team. You got to wonder how many more have popped up since then. It's like, how do we even start to wrap our heads around something so simple yet so elusive? And that's exactly what we're diving into today, folks. Because let's be real, you're all here because you want to grasp these big, complex ideas without getting bogged down in like a swamp of jargon, right?
Exactly.
So consider this your fast track to understanding. No need to wade through all the weeds.
Totally. And the question we're tackling today is a big one, the one that's kind of been shaking things up in the tech world and beyond. Can AI actually be creative? We see it everywhere. AI writing articles, composing music, even making scientific discoveries. But is it real creativity, like the kind that drives human ingenuity? Or is it, something different? That's the crux of our discussion.
Right on. And we've got a whole bunch of fascinating stuff to pull from today, but we're basing this deep dive primarily on a very thorough survey called Creativity and AI. Think of it as our roadmap, guiding us through the history, the present, and even the future of this whole AI creativity scene. So what we're aiming for today is to really unpack what AI is doing in this space, like looking at those creative-looking outputs, but also wrestling with these fundamental questions. What does it even mean for an algorithm to be original? How do we judge the value of something made by AI? Can our human definition of creativity even apply to, well, a machine?
Yeah, those are the big questions. And hopefully, by the end of our little deep dive here, you'll not only be in the know about all the awesome progress happening in AI creativity, but also have a grip on the debates and limitations that are, still out there. So I guess the first thing is, how do we even define creativity in the first place? Where do we even begin?
Right, it's like trying to nail jelly to a wall.
Yeah.
I mean, over 100 definitions, remember?
That's right.
It's totally subjective, right? What one person thinks is pure genius, someone else might see as, like, just meh. But there is this standard definition a lot of philosophers and psychologists seem to agree on, and our survey points to it too.
Yeah.
It boils down to two main things: novelty and value.
Okay, that makes sense. Novelty is pretty straightforward, right? It's about being original, unique, something that hasn't been done before in that exact way.
Yeah.
But the value part, that's where things get a little more slippery.
Yeah, for sure.
Usually when we think of value, we think of something positive, beneficial, you know. But our survey throws in this really interesting concept of, like, dark creativity. Like, imagine a new way to do a cyber attack.
Whoa.
It's definitely novel, and it's effective in what it's designed to do, even if it's malicious. So maybe value, in this context, just means effectiveness towards some goal, whether it's ethical or not. It kind of throws a wrench into things.
It does. It's like creativity isn't always sunshine and rainbows. It can be used for good or bad.
Yeah.
And how we judge that value, well, that's just us being human, right?
Totally.
And our values can change, Think about artists or scientists who are ridiculed at first and then, bam, suddenly they're geniuses. Like, look at the Impressionists.
Yeah, exactly.
But even the whole value thing is up for debate, isn't it? Like, some people say that in certain areas, like art, just the fact that something is completely new can be its own kind of value. The whole, wow, no one's ever done that before factor.
Right, right. It's interesting, though, how even this standard definition, with all its nuances, still doesn't quite sit right with our gut feeling about creativity.
What do you mean?
Well, our survey emphasizes the role of agency and intentionality. Think about it. A volcano erupts and creates this incredibly unique rock formation. Novel, absolutely. Valuable, maybe someone thinks so. But do we call the volcano creative? Probably not.
Right.
Because it's not like the volcano was trying to make art. It just happened. Same thing if you accidentally spill paint and it looks like a Jackson Pollock masterpiece. Is that creativity?
Interesting.
There's an argument to be made that a conscious intention to create something new, that's a key ingredient. Weisberg even goes as far as saying that creativity is basically intentional novelty.
Right. It's not just about the happy accident. It's about that drive to create the process itself.
Exactly. And then there's the element of spontaneity and surprise. Our sources talk about this too. If something's just the result of a predictable step-by-step process, where's the spark?
Yeah, it's got to have that unexpected twist, that aha moment.
Exactly. Perkins, in his research, he talks about reasonable problems, like solving a crossword puzzle, where you can just follow the clues, versus unreasonable problems that need like a more intuitive, less straightforward approach.
Right.
And that brings us to Bowden's definition, which is actually the framework our survey used.
Tell me more about that.
She expands on the whole novelty and usefulness thing, but adds a third element. Surprise.
Surprise, okay.
Or, like, non-obviousness. So, to be truly creative, according to Bowden, it can't just be new and useful. It also has to be something you wouldn't have predicted, something that's not just a logical next step. And it's interesting because this lines up pretty well with how we give out patents.
Oh, how so?
An invention usually needs to be novel, useful, and not obvious to someone who knows that field.
That makes sense.
So as we go through this, we'll be judging AI's creations by those three things: novelty, usefulness, and surprise. That's Bowden's definition.
I like it. So we have our definition, or at least a framework for thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out creativity isn't just one big blob, right? There are different types of creativity.
You got it. Like Bowden talks about P creativity, which is like psychological creativity. That's something that's new to the person who made it, even if other people have already thought of it.
Okay.
And then there's H creativity, historical creativity. That's something that's totally new to human history, like the invention of the wheel or, the internet.
Okay, I'm with you. So like a student figuring out a new math problem for themselves versus the person who first discovered that math principle, right?
Exactly. Both creative in their own way.
Cool.
And then there's this 4C model, which categorizes creativity based on its scale and impact. So you have little c creativity, the everyday stuff, problem solving, coming up with new ideas. Then there's big C creativity, the groundbreaking achievements that change things forever. But there are also these in-between levels.
Okay, like what?
Like mini C, which is that personal aha moment, making new connections. You see this a lot in kids. And pro C, professional level creativity, people who are skilled and innovative in their field but haven't necessarily changed the world, like a really good architect who isn't famous.
Right, it's like a spectrum from those personal light bulb moments to like earth-shattering discoveries.
Totally.
And I know you mentioned Hassabis's 3 levels of innovation earlier. It seems like another helpful way to look at it.
Absolutely. He talks about interpolation, which is basically combining existing ideas to create something new. Like in drug discovery, maybe you make a new molecule that has features of existing drugs.
Okay.
Then there's extrapolation, extending the boundaries of what we know but staying within the existing rules, like making a faster computer.
Right.
And finally, there's invention, the big one. Creating something entirely new, a total game changer. The transistor, that's a great example.
So we've got our definitions, our types of creativity. Now let's get to the fun part. What has AI actually achieved? Let's start with text generation, because that's been making a lot of noise lately.
Oh, yeah. Early attempts at AI text generation were, well, pretty clunky. They relied on pre-programmed rules and limited data. They could write simple stories and poems, but they were stiff and struggled with new topics or styles.
Yeah, I remember those.
But then came the transformer architecture.
Ah, the game changer.
Right. These models can understand context over long stretches of text. Now they can write really coherent stories, poems on all sorts of topics, and even try their hand at humor, jokes, puns, even sarcasm.
It's kind of crazy. You give it a prompt, and it can spin a whole yarn. Our survey mentions things like automated story generation and even humor data sets, specifically to test these capabilities.
And it's really interesting when you compare AI writing with top-notch human writing. The survey gives the example of a love poem published in The New Yorker versus one written by GPT-4o, a really advanced AI.
Okay, so what's the difference?
The AI poem, it's technically sound, good vocabulary, even evocative language.
Love it.
But the human poem, it goes deeper. More complex metaphors, a sense of real human experience.
I see.
It's like the AI can imitate the style, but not the depth, the originality, the human touch.
Right, the lived experience behind the words.
Right.
Okay, so what about creative problem solving? That's another area where we think of humans being really good.
Absolutely. It's basically coming up with new and effective solutions to problems. And this is hard for AI. You need to not only come up with new ideas, but also apply common sense and adapt to new situations. Psychologists break this down into 2 types of thinking: convergent and divergent.
Right, convergent thinking is like zeroing in on the one right answer, right? Like a logic puzzle.
Exactly.
Okay.
Our survey looks at how AI does on things like the remote associates test, where you get 3 words and have to find a 4th that connects them all.
I've seen those.
They also mention puzzle games like NYT Connections and the British show Only Connect, which often have tricks and misleading clues.
To make it harder.
Yeah. And it turns out that AI can sometimes solve these, but it struggles with the misleading stuff.
Really?
Yeah, it gets stuck in one way of thinking. It's called the fixation effect. Same problem with figuring out unusual uses for everyday objects.
So it might know a brick is for building, but not that it can be a doorstop or a paperweight.
Exactly. Then there's divergent thinking, which is about brainstorming, coming up with lots of ideas. There's this thing called the alternative uses task, where you list all the uses you can think of for, say, a brick. AI can actually do pretty well on these quantity-wise.
So lots of ideas, but not necessarily groundbreaking ones.
Right. The issue is lateral thinking, thinking outside the box. AI tends to stay within more conventional boundaries.
Interesting. Okay, so text generation and problem solving, definitely progress, but with limits. Now, what about visual art? AI image generation has really blown up recently.
Oh, yeah. We've come a long way from painting and photography to digital art and now AI. Early AI art was mostly things like style transfer, copying one artist's style onto another image, or image super resolution, making images sharper.
Right.
But the real revolution, that's transformer and diffusion models.
Those are the big names now.
Yeah. These models can generate really high-quality images, even videos, just from text descriptions. DALL-E, stable diffusion, these are changing everything.
It's amazing what you can do with a few words now. But are there still limits to AI's creativity in visual art?
For sure. The survey points out that AI struggles with compositionality, making sure all the parts of an image make sense together. It can also mess up common sense, creating images that are physically impossible.
Yeah, I've seen some of those, like a cat with 3 heads or something.
Exactly. And getting the spatial relationships between objects right, that's still tough for AI.
So the big picture is there, but the details might be off.
Right.
Okay, how about music? Can AI compose music that we humans actually connect with?
Well, AI has been dabbling in music for a while, starting with rule-based systems and algorithms. Then came neural networks like MuseGAN and Jukebox. They can make music in different styles, but judging their creativity is tricky. Musical taste is so subjective. Plus, there's the question of originality.
What do you mean?
Research suggests that these AI models can sometimes copy large chunks of their training data.
Ah, so not as original as it might seem.
Right. And even though the tech is getting better, studies show that people generally prefer music made by other humans. They say AI music lacks emotional depth, feels disjointed, or has weird, unexpected harmonies.
It's like it knows the notes, but not the feeling.
Exactly.
Okay, what about science? Can AI be a creative force in scientific discovery?
Now, this is really exciting. AI has been involved in scientific automation since the 70s. Early on, it could discover equations from data, a process called symbolic regression.
Okay.
But now it's doing even more. Generating new hypotheses, helping prove theorems, identifying new concepts, even predicting molecular structures like DeepMind's AlphaFold, that was a big deal.
Right.
And AI is being used to automate parts of the scientific process, like reviewing literature, developing hypotheses, even writing papers.
So it's not just analyzing data, it's actually contributing to new knowledge.
Exactly.
That's huge. But even with all this progress, our survey says there are still some big challenges for AI creativity.
Definitely. One of the biggest debates is whether AI is actually being creative or just, remixing what it's learned from massive data sets. Some argue it's just interpolating or extrapolating or even memorizing and spitting out variations of its training data.
So not true originality, just clever manipulation.
It's a big question. The survey also points out that AI is still behind humans in creative writing, often producing less diverse and sometimes repetitive content. It struggles with intuitive problem solving and abstract thinking.
Right.
And then there's the issue of hallucinations. AI can make stuff up, confidently present false information.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it can sound creative, even authoritative, but be totally wrong.
That's a big problem, especially in science. Okay, so how do we even judge if AI is being creative? It seems so subjective.
It is. What one person loves, another might hate. And the survey points out that even experts in the field can disagree on whether something's creative, regardless of whether it's made by a human or AI.
Right.
So to deal with this, researchers recommend the consensual assessment technique, which basically means getting a bunch of experts to judge together.
That makes sense.
But there are also attempts to create automated ways to measure creativity. For example, to measure novelty, there are creative adversarial networks, or CANs.
Okay.
They train a model to create stuff that can fool another model into thinking it's real and new.
Clever.
And for surprise, there are metrics based on information theory measuring how unpredictable something is. And there are semantic distance measures, looking at the conceptual differences in a text or image.
So trying to quantify creativity in a way.
Exactly.
Okay, and all this AI creativity, it brings up a whole bunch of ethical and legal questions, especially about copyright and authorship.
Absolutely. If AI makes a song or a painting, who owns it? The user who gave the prompt? The developers who made the AI? Could the AI even be considered an author?
Wow.
These are tough questions. Right now, copyright law mostly protects human authors, not machines. So how do you assign authorship for AI creations?
It's tricky. The user gives the idea, but the AI does the work.
Exactly. Some say the user should own it because they'll develop and share it. Others say the developers just made a tool, like a knife maker isn't responsible for what you do with the knife.
Right.
There are even arguments for recognizing AI as an author in some cases.
Interesting.
Our survey mentions lawsuits against companies like Stable Diffusion, which shows how we need clearer laws in this area.
Yeah, the law is playing catch up with the tech.
And there are questions about whether training AI on copyrighted material is even legal. It's a messy situation.
It really is. Okay, so we know AI can create, but do we understand how it does it, or is it all just a black box?
It's still largely a mystery. We can analyze the inputs and outputs, but the inner workings are very complex. But scientists are starting to investigate this, comparing AI's creative process to humans doing similar tasks.
So we're getting glimpses inside.
Right. And one way we can influence AI's creativity is through prompt engineering.
Prompt engineering, what's that?
It's how we write the prompts that we give to AI. Things like including brainstorming in the prompt, giving it background knowledge, or suggesting weird scenarios can lead to more creative outputs.
So it's like collaborating with the AI, guiding its creativity.
Exactly.
Wow, we've covered a lot today. So let's sum up the key takeaways for our listeners.
Okay. We've seen the incredible progress AI has made in creating text, images, music, even scientific discoveries. But there are still big challenges with originality, common sense, and abstract thought.
Right.
Judging AI creativity is hard, but researchers are working on ways to do it fairly. And we've got these huge ethical and legal questions about copyright and what it means to be an author in the age of AI.
It's a whole new world. So as AI keeps evolving and getting more creative, it makes you wonder, how will our understanding of creativity change? What will this mean for art, science, and even what it means to be human? Something we all need to think about because AI is here to stay and it's changing everything. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.